here. Okay, now we are live in YouTube, and this is record also. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon the place of the planet you are in today. On behalf of the World Federation of Youth Theosophists, it is my pleasure to welcome you all today to this 7th online gathering. Before beginning with the panelists and today's subject, that is the voice of the silence, I want to propose to make together a meditation. So for that, if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes, you can sit comfortable, and we will focus on our breathing. Let's just inhale and exhale until we feel the tensions slowly disappearing from our body. And until our mind focuses in the here and the now. Let's remember that we are not our thoughts. We are the divine wisdom. We are not our desires. We are the divine willpower. We are not our emotions. We are the divine law. Let us feel how, through the breathing, we connect among us and become a collective force. And from that feeling of unity and connection, let us visualize healing, well-being, peace, harmony, compassion, love, universal law. Let us send that light, that love to the world, to each living and sentient being. Let us just keep this feeling for a couple of minutes. Now, slowly, whenever we feel it's time, we can begin to slowly move our hands, our feet, open our eyes with a feeling of gratitude in our hearts. Oh, hidden light, vibrant in every atom. Oh, hidden light, shining in every creature. Oh, hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May all who feel themselves as one with thee know they are therefore one with every other. Well, so once more, welcome everyone to this panel of today, our seventh online gathering of young Theosophists. Today's panel has as topic the voice of the silence. Voice of the Silence, that book considered to be one of the great classics of the theosophical literature. And about this book, the Dalai Lama has been quote that he believes that this book has strongly influenced many sincere seekers and aspirants to the wisdom and compassion of the Bodhisattva path. We are happy to gather once more to spend some time among friends. And before beginning, some small recommendations regarding technical aspects. To keep our mics muted during the 4 presentations that we have today. And in case you have comments or questions at the end of the presentation, we will be opening the sharing time, as you know, and you can raise your hand, you can write questions in the chat box, however you feel more comfortable. So, well, let's begin with our first speaker of the day, Edgar. Edgar Unda. I guess Edgar has already joined.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I will. Hi, Edgar.
Hi, how are
So,
you?
Edgar is from Mexico, and he is a writer and a lecturer on theosophical, metaphysical, and occultism topics. He has been teaching spiritual education for more than 10 years in different states of the Mexican Republic. He has also collaborated with the Theosophical Society in Mexico, promulgating the spirit of universal brotherhood and encouraging the comparative study of ancient and modern philosophy, science, and religion. For 8 years, he has studied Tibetan Buddhism with his teacher Lama Yesi Palgyor Rinpoche in one of the oldest lineages in Tibet, the Nyingma lineage. He has worked with Lama Yeshe non-stop, spreading the mystical teachings of Tibet. He works in conjunction with one of the greatest exponents of esoteric issues at the Spanish-speaking level, Manuel Arduino Pavón, and together they produced the renowned book Lights in the Path. Likewise, he has been nurtured by different philosophical and esoteric schools, which have inspired him to give lectures and disseminate a cultural and spiritual heritage for humanity. Be very welcome, Edgar.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here sharing the teachings with everyone. This is my first time sharing like a conference in English. So sorry if my English is not so good, but I'm gonna try to do my best effort. So thank you to everyone. Catalina, I would like to share my.
Yeah, you can share.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
very good. Give me some seconds here, please. Okay, today I'm gonna try to be very fast because I only have 15 minutes. Uh, those everyone can hear me good. My audio it's good.
Yes, Edgar is perfect.
Okay, very good. Okay, I'm gonna start with this book that Elena Blavatsky wrote. It's one of the most important books, I will say, because well, we have the secret doctrine and is unavailable, but the voice of the silence is it's a book that contains a lot of rules for all the students or the serious students that want to make a progress in the spiritual life. Good. Elena Blavatsky starts this book saying the next thing for the daily use of Lanus or disciples. Uh, why does she use this introduction like for the daily use? I mean, this book is not only about deep philosophy, it's about um, like every day and every minute we have to practice these teachings. And it's not so easy because the voice of the silence talks about how do we have to listen our own soul. So that's the main thing in all the book. Why? Because we have like different voices. And the question here that we have in our daily life, it's how do I listen to myself? Right? Because every time and at every moment we are living in big cities. Just imagine like Delhi, just imagine like Mexico City, New York, Times Square, um, all these big societies. There's a lot of noise in these parts of the world. So you can, we have to discern the difference between the external world and our inner world. And that's like the main um, topic in the voice of the silence. And we have to investigate, like inquire how we can to listen ourselves. Because maybe we say that we understand about our own mind, our own emotions. And Catalina, for example, in the meditation, she was explaining about we are not the desire, we are not the mind, we are not this physical body. And that's the thing about the voice of the silence, because all the time we are listening our desires, our physical body that requires like food, water, and basic things. And also our mind, our thoughts. And the question here is that if we are all that things, that's why how can I listen to myself? That's the main question. And what I am or what am I? So we are listening constantly the news, our fathers, our the society that we are living, our religion, our philosophy, and we are full about concepts, about books, about gurus, about teachers, and we are not empty. So the voice of the silence talks about the emptiness. But if you want to get or you want to be in the emptiness, you have to destroy all those voices that you listen in your mind, the voice of your desire, the voice of your physical body, and you have to discern when you are listening these different voices. and you have to discern if you are all these kind of voices. And this requires a big effort because it's not, as I said before, it's not so easy to destroy all the things that you have learned since you was a child, right? And the spiritual path, the occultism path, requires a big effort. Maybe it's the most difficult task that we have in this life. Because to listen to yourself requires a lot of courage. It's easier to listen to someone that is going to say to tell you what you have to do. We are always looking for those kind of answers, like tell me what I have to do and I will do it. Listening all the time external voices. That's why the book is the voice of the silence, because your mind, your feelings, your physical body have to be in complete silence. But how you are going to get that kind of consciousness? That's why we have to read the book, I mean, the voice of the silence, right? Because in 15 minutes, we don't have enough time to explain all these deeply teachings. And we have another speaker. So I'm going to try to finish. This is strong. Elena Blavatsky talks about that these instructions are for those ignorant of the danger of the lower hidi or siddhis. And what does it mean this? That these teachings are for those who are not looking for develop like powers and the third eye and cleaning the chakras and the prophecy and all these kind of things. Why? Because this is selfish. The voice of the silence talks about the dangers that we have in this path if we are looking these powers just for like, I don't know how to say it, selfish, I mean, egoismo. Can someone...
Yeah, selfishness.
Yeah, selfishness, that's right. So if we try to develop these powers just for selfishness, we are going to have a lot of obstacles, and maybe you're going to get crazy and you're going to get end very, very bad. So the voice of the silence, it's also like a map for the serious students, and talks about the bodhisattva path, the compassion path. And these powers are going to get naturally because you are trying to help in all the humanity. But if you are looking the occultism path just because you want to levitate or you want to fly or read the mind of your girlfriend or your boyfriend, you're going to get a lot of problems. Maybe you're going to get these powers, but also you have a lot of risk to practice the black magic, right? And for the last one, to end, do we have time, Catalina?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, very good. The book starts with the next thing. We have to be indifferent, or we have to get to this state of consciousness, like indifferent to the objects. Having become indifferent to the objects of perception, the pupil must seek out the Raja of the senses, the thought producer, he who awakes illusion. So, as I said before, we had a lot of voices, right? We have this like personality, the physical body, the emotional body, it's a way to say it, because if we talk in Sanskrit, we have the Sthula Sharira, the Linga Sharira, the Kamas, and well, I mean Prana, Kamas, and Manas, right? So the mind is like is who awakes the illusion. The mind says about what is real and what is not real. I don't know if someone here, I think maybe everyone has seen Matrix, this movie that it's very famous, right? And the Matrix is the Majavic or the Maya, that it means the illusion. All this world, all your goals, maybe, all your thoughts, your dreams, actually are produced by the mind. And why the voice of the silence talks about that the mind is the structure of the real things? Because maybe I don't know. It sometimes happens. Let's get an example. Uh, let's say that your girlfriend or your boyfriend, they are not with you right now, and they went to a meeting, and you are trying to call them by the phone, but they don't answer you. And what sometimes your mind starts to develop like specific thoughts, like maybe she or he is with another one, or maybe she doesn't love me anymore, or maybe, and you don't know that what she's doing or what he's doing actually, but your mind starts to imagine things that doesn't exist. Or maybe in your job, or maybe with your family, we create things that doesn't exist, but we think that are real because we identified, or we are identified with our mind. And you start to suffering about these kind of thoughts. That's why the mind kills the real things. And we have to be indifferent to the external world. And it doesn't mean that you don't care the external world. It means like you don't feel identification, or you don't identify with external things. When you realize this, you start to develop another kind of consciousness, and you get free about the suffering and the fear and the depression and all these kind of things that are produced by the mind, because we don't understand it. We identified it, or we are identified it with this mind, with these feelings, but we are not these kind of things. And it's very easy to say it, it's very easy to read it, but practice that you really, like a fact, like a psychological fact, when you realize this, you get free about the suffering, and you can help to another human beings, right? And that's what it happens with the Buddha when he gets the enlightenment. He gets like, I don't know if it's correct to say se liberó.
Yes, got free.
Yeah, he got freed or released. I think it's he released from the Maya, from the illusion, because he understood that he's not the body, he's not his mind. So we are much more than that. Yeah, 2 minutes more. But to discover that we are more than our mind, we have to discern, as I said before, our different voices, the voices of the society, the voices of the news, the voices in the newspapers, the voices in the religion, the voices in all this media, and the things that you believe that you understood by your own, actually, it's another lie, because we are not listening to ourselves all the time. We are listening to external things. So the voice of the silence, through the older book, talks about these things. Well, as I say, the mind is the great slayer of the real. let the disciples slay the slayer. So, well, it's more deeply than this, of course. And to finish, the master, the Mahatma Kuthumi, talks about the voice of the silence or the book of the golden precepts. It's an epitome of hidden truths that will be a source of information and teaching for serious students for many years to come. So please don't forget this important book because, as the master Kuthumi says, it's a source of information for serious students. So, well, that's all. I hope, I don't know how to say it, but for my part, it's all. So we can go to the next speaker.
Okay. Thank you very much, Edgar, for your words, for this that you have conveyed to us today. And now we are going to listen our next speaker from the Philippines, Armielyn Matela. She is a member of the Golden Link Theosophical Lodge in the Philippines. She is also an educator, and she works as a youth volunteer for the Theosophical Society. So I just will ask Edgar to stop sharing his screen because I guess Armielyn is also going to share hers. So you can help us with that, Edgar,
Okay, okay,
please.
I'm
Thank
going.
you.
Done.
Thank you very much. So, Armielyn, please be welcome. Where are you?
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good
Hi.
morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our brothers and sisters around the world. And I'm here to share with you what I have read and what I have understood about the first fragment on the book, um, The Voice of the Silence. I'm quite nervous right now. Okay, so I just a disclaimer that the things that I will be sharing with you are just my understanding and my reflection. I don't claim that I am an expert of the book, but with the readings that I have and the research that I had during the preparation for the talk is quite important and um, made a lot of difference in the way I perceive things. And let me share with you my screen first. Okay, and let me present. Okay, so I'll be sharing with you the fragment one, which is the voice of the silence. For this, I use the book by Blavatsky, by Madame Blavatsky, The Voice of the Silence, and the commentary of General Olcott. Not, no, not General Olcott, but um, C.W. Ledbetter. Okay, so in the fragment one, Blavatsky discuss what is this voice of silence and what are the things that we can do to attain or to hear this voice of silence that the masters are talking about. So the first one or the first part is um, as what Edgar was sharing a while ago. The first part is about the higher and the lower powers. That is, remember the one of the objectives in the Theosophical Society is to to unravel the latent power in man. And um, in the voice of the silence. This book is actually intended for the disciples or those who are already in the path or in the initiation. Therefore, Madame Blavatsky said on the first part that these instructions are for those ignorant of the dangers of the lower ED, or this ED is um, referring to the powers of man or to the people who have attained a certain power, like for example clairvoyant or clairvoyancy. And in the high, what are these dangers that they are talking about? Ledbetter said three dangers that the people or us, we have to be careful and we have to be aware of. And number one of that is pride. Okay, because if the disciple or if a man have unravel one latent power, for example telepathy or um, clairvoyancy, um, a person might fall into the trap of having pride or being proud of what he or she has attained, like this power. And so with this power that he or she had, he or she might feel that he or she is above other people or more powerful than other people. And that is one of the dangers, being boastful and being prideful of what we have attained, where in fact um, some people can attain it earlier, but everybody will eventually attain these powers. And as Edgar mentioned a while ago, we have um, when we attain certain powers, we have to be careful of why do we need or why do we want these powers? Because if we fall into to being boastful of it, then we are not actually treading the path that we are talking about. Another danger is that of ignorance. Ignorance to the history of people who have attained this higher and lower powers. And if a person is ignorant of this history, he or she might feel that he knows everything about this power that he or she has attained. And therefore, with this, we will again go back to being prideful and thinking that he is above other people. And the third danger is impurity. Leadbeater said that if we have a pure heart and a pure mind, therefore the external factors, for example, the things or the elements that there are in the other planes of or other vehicles, like for example we have the physical form or the physical planes, then we have the astral planes, the mental planes. There might be other elements that can or would like to lure or give impure intentions because of the power that you have. But if a person or if a disciple has this pure heart and mind, therefore he or she will not be will not fall into those traps that other elements in other vehicles might present to him or her. So uh, that is what it is meant here. And on this part, it is also mentioned on the book that he who would hear the voice of nada, the soundless sound, and comprehend it, he has to learn the nature of the dharana. So the soundless sound that we are talking about here is the voice of the silence, or the voice of the spiritual soul. And to attain or to hear this soundless sound, we can do three things. We can do concentration, meditation, and contemplation, wherein concentration will fix or it will try to fix one's thought on a certain scripture, or a certain thought about what we have read or what we have known about what we are studying. So that is on concentration. While meditation will it will try to look, or through meditation we are looking at it in every possible light and try to penetrate the meaning to reach a new and deep meaning of a certain thing. And contemplation is to fix one's attraction or attention for a line on the light that you have received. It means we are reflecting of what light or what knowledge we have gained in a certain reading or certain period of studying that we have. Okay, again, so to hear the voice of the soundless sound, um, we can concentrate, meditate, and contemplate. And so it is also mentioned there that the slayer of the real, that the mind is the great slayer of the real, and let the disciple slay the slayer. It means the disciple or the person or the man should try to slay the mind or um, treat the mind itself. And in here, again, we will go back to the three things that I've mentioned a while ago. The concentration, because um, the concentration is the one who will be the slayer of the mind. Because if we are concentrating on something, we are actually fixing our thought in a certain topic without personal or without personal judgment. We are just seeing a certain text or the one that we are studying on the light that we have. Okay, then, oh sorry, let me go back. The real and the unreal. For For when to himself his form appears unreal, as do on waking all the forms he sees in dreams, when he has ceased to hear the many, he may discern the one, the inner sounds which kills the outer. So what does it mean? So what is true is that until the man is able to hear the inner voice or the voice of the spiritual soul, and look upon himself from the standpoint of the higher planes or the higher self. So we have been talking about the levels of consciousness. So the higher self or the higher planes are the higher mental, the atma, and the body. And therefore, uh, with the real and the unreal, we should be in harmony between our ego or the personality and the other vehicles or the higher self. Okay, the disciple should perceive things on its respective vehicles. The one we are seeing in the physical might not be the same in the astral plane or in the astral form, not also the same in the mental form, and so on. And therefore, the personality must be pure and the self must be open minded to avoid the limited perception of certain things, because things or our perception becomes unreal, or we are seeing things in an unreal situation because of the way we perceive it and because of our limited knowledge and other things. Okay, so next is the warning voice. For then the soul will hear and will remember, and then the inner ear will speak the voice of the silence. And it will say the following. So in here, the voice of the Atma or the higher self will not be the voice of the ego or the personality. It means we have to discriminate if what we are hearing or what the motivation that we have will is really coming from the higher self and not from the personality or the ego or from the lower self. If there are still struggle between the personality or the lower self and the higher self, therefore he or she cannot really hear the voice of silence, or the soul is still hearing the voice on the earth or the desires and other things that in the lower self. Okay, and so let's move to the second one, the self and all self. So what's the difference between self and all self? This earth disciple is the hall of sorrow, wherein are set along the path of dire probation traps to ensnare thy ego by delusion called the great heresy. This great heresy that we are talking about is the idea of the separateness of the soul and the self, the individual soul and self, to the universal self, or the infinite self. In here, um, we will try to remove the horrors of being selfish, or the horrors of selfishness upon to all mankind, and show the mankind the joy and happiness that the world can attain. And so the mastery of the personality to the higher self is very important. What comes into my mind um, in the self and all self is the idea of the unity of life, that we are not separate with one another. For example, the people who are here right now and those people who are um, listening in YouTube, we are all one. We are not separate from one another. So from self, the individual self, to all self, or the infinite, or the universal self. Then there comes the three holes. So three holes, O weary pilgrim, lead to the end of the toils. The three holes of the O conqueror of Mara will bring thee through the three states into the fourth, and hence thence into the seven worlds, the worlds of rest eternal. So the number one, or the first hall, is the hall of ignorance, in which you will not see the light if you will leave, if you will not see the light if you do not know it. And so you will live with that ignorance, or the things that you just acquire, and die with it. And then with the stage of ignorance will also come the stage of learning, or the hall of learning, in which it says that you will find the blossom of life, but under the flowers are serpent coil, because in the process of learning um, we might be gaining something, but along the process we might be confused and be doubtful of the things that we are acquiring. And the wisdom, in which the indestructible fount of omniscience. And these three holes can be seen in two lights. One in an objective planes, wherein the ignorance is in the physical realm, the learning is in the astromental, or the lower mental, and the wisdom is in the higher mental. But we can also see it in a subjective condition of a man, in which the man who lives ignorantly of the world will be complied to fall into to his desires and an uncontrolled passion, and that is the stage of ignorance. And if the mind realizes the law of nature and work with it and learn things with it, and he will learn that with this knowledge he has more power to control his desire and uncontrolled passion, and that is the stage of learning. And the third will be the man who realize the spiritual law and obey these learnings, or the man who lives according to the knowledge and the law of nature, is the stage of wisdom. Then uh, I skip some of the parts, which is, for example, the seven sounds. I skipped it. You can read it in your own time. But what I also gain here is the to become the path. The It is saying that the disciple is not actually treading the path, but he or she or the disciple is actually the path himself. So the path is mentioned in all the mystics works, as Krishna says in, when this path is beheld, whether one sets out to the bloom of the east or to the chamber of the west without moving, O holder of the bow, it is traveling in this road, in this path, to whatever place one would go, that that place one's own self becomes. Thou art the path, is said to the adept guru, and by the latter to the to the disciple after initiation. I am the way and the path, says another master. Um, in here, in becoming the path, the person will try to kill out the desire, and upon killing out the desire, we have to be aware as well if this desire will come again or will come forth again, and so we have to slay it once again. And one more is to kill the love of life, and which means do not be attracted with the eternal life, or with staying in the physical world. And then I think this will be the last one. One road. And so when we hear the voice of the silence, there is but one road to the path, and its very end alone of the voice of silence can be heard. And in here, Ledbetter mentioned that it has given to us through the master of the path. There are four ways to attain this one road, and one is by contact with those who have already on the path, two by deep thought, three by hearing and reading the sacred words, and four by practice of virtue. And of course, there are also four qualification which is given at the in the book at the feet of the master, which are discrimination, desirelessness, good conduct, and love. In which love is very important, because without this, the other qualification will not be very important. Okay. Uh-huh. So with this, I would like to ask us, how can we translate it into our daily life? Because as I have understood, this book is for those disciples already, and I think, at least personally, I think that I am far from being a disciple. And so, how do we translate these things into our daily life? First, for me, is to help ourselves so that we can hear the voice of the silence. And how do we help ourselves? Theosophy taught us to study, to meditate, and to give service. And therefore, I think we can help ourselves by practicing mindfulness in our everyday life, to actually see what is happening and not judging it based on our past experience, or based on the things that we think might happen in the future. And of course, to discriminate what is real and the unreal. Are we perceiving these things as a real or an unreal? Is it helpful or unhelpful? One, to us, and two, to the people around us and to the humanity. And are the actions that we are doing is actually selfless or selfish? Because sometimes we don't really know. We might think that we are being selfless, but deep inside there might be an ounce of selfishness in there. And therefore, by helping ourselves through mindfulness and desirelessness, discrimination, we can now extend our hand and lend hand our helping hand to others and give service to other people. I think this is my reflection in the first fragment of the voice of the silence. Again, as Theosophy teach us, study, meditate, and serve. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Armielyn, for your complete and detailed presentation. And now we want to welcome our next speaker of today, coming from India. His name is Sri Harsha, and he has a CA final student and is pursuing a BCom from Andhra University. He also is a content creator on YouTube platform in a channel called Student Learnings with Sri Harsha. And also he has published a novel on Amazon. About him, we can say that the only factor that he says that the only factor that makes you beautiful is by you being that nucleus and generating curiosity. That's the way he frames every single day and prepares himself. Hailing from a theosophical background, due to his father, his mother, and his uncle, who are members of the Theosophical Society. That has allowed him to become a curious person about Theosophy and therefore joining Theosophical Society and learn about Theosophy. He has been a part of the Theosophical Society for 6 years at the Theosophical Society in Bizac. And now he's serving as a lodge secretary. And currently he's working as an article student at D.M. Rao and Company, Chartered Accountants in Visakhapatnam. So we welcome Sri Harsha.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you.
So am I audible? That is the first question I have to ask.
Audible. Yeah. Perfect.
So, all right. The two presentations prior to me was fantastic, I would say. Edgar was excellent and Armielyn also was excellent, because 15 minutes condensing a topic like voice of the silence is way too tough, I would say, because this is not a subject that is to be discussed or interpreted in 15 minutes for each speaker. But anyways, that was the time limit and we have to respect the time limit and we have to prepare our best level possible so that it would give a light on the thought. So I'm using my phone camera so that it may be a disturbance for the eye contact. So never mind about the eye contact, but still I would be watchful enough. So during this research for the talk, where I'm preparing for the voice of the silencer, after a 2-day or 3-day research about voice of the silence, I've noted a point or a reference from a movie. I assume that 95% of you people might have watched or might have read Harry Potter. So that is a great one, Harry Potter. So in that Harry Potter, there was a dialogue of Professor Dumbledore in the third part, I guess, Prisoner of Azkaban. He says, quoted, Professor Dumbledore says, happiness can be found in the darkest of times, but only if one remembers to turn on the light. So this is a statement that has been reflected by me when I am researching about voice of the silence. Maybe if I have to sum it up, like in my own interpretation, then this statement could be a starting point for all the beginner readers or all the intermediate readers who are advancing to read voice of the silence, because they have to find an image of interpreting, because Madam Blavatsky has rightly said, and Edgar also pointed that it is dedicated to the few. That means there was a prior qualification, or I would say there is a level of standard before reading voice of this silence. But that doesn't deny that others cannot read. Anybody can read any book. It is of complete freedom. But one must be completely true to himself, that he has to point out the mistakes. He has to point out where is he going wrong. He has to point out what is the lights that he has found in the book, rather than he feeling that guilt, because there are many things that has been said in the book that are not at all being followed by any one of us. So there could be a guilt if we don't open our minds and read this book. That is why, more than interpretation, more than anything else, this requires a pure thought, a complete open-mindedness before reading it. And this is also pointed out by Edgar, that we have to be that out of that illusion. We have to be that free soul where you can explore every thought. We have to listen all voices. Then we can go to the final one, the voice of the silence. So being a finance guy, I can say that we all assume so many things. The finance background assumes so many things. So let us assume here as well. We assume that the disciple has reached the voice of the silence. He has achieved the main part, that is the voice of the silence. Now comes the second fragment, the two parts. The beauty with this voice of the silence written by Madame Blavatsky is that every fragment is independent to each other. You might not read the complete book. You can read the whole text of only one single fragment. You can find an independence of the other chapter. There is no special bondage because this is an extract from the ancient book, the Golden Precepts. And Madame Blavatsky knew 39 out of 90 golden precepts by heart. And out of those 39, he has taken only three in the voice of the silence. And there was a point where one of the close disciple of Madame Blavatsky asked Madam that, why did you choose only three? Why not those 39? Is available to you? Why can't you write those 39 golden precepts so that it would be available to the humanity? And Madam said that these three are too high. Why about this 39 and all? First, we'll go by first step, second step, then third step. Why do you rush for the other steps and go for the Mount Everest? So we have to be watchful enough. We have to be understanding each and every step slowly, thoroughly, and these two parts are closely to be understood. That is why the interpretation is not so important. The understanding is not so important. The watchfulness before reading this book is absolutely important, because if I interpret in a way that I can influence your thought, I can influence your idea of approach of reading this book, then the whole purpose of Voice of Silence gets disturbed. The point is more than interpretation. It is to inspire. It is here to inspire each and every person in the Theosophist community, or in the background where the person is about to explore the spirituality. Then before interpretation, he must be inspired enough to get that higher level. As the prior speakers also point out that this is a guide. This is a kind of a guidebook where the disciple has reached a state where he is ready for some exploration, then he is now getting a guide. This is not a book like an all-time bestseller, Secret, or I would say Think and Grow Rich, or many books which are being the top sellers. This could be a top seller provided the community of spiritualists are more. But having said that, this is not meant for that. This is meant for the highest or the deeper sense of people, deeper sense of thought. So the reader technically has to read this book without any ambition. That is the first part. So coming to two parts, the first important part is the open path, which is absolutely clear that once the voice of the silence is achieved, the individual can attain the path of liberation. That is what we hear or read in different scriptures. Maybe it is from Western or Eastern or Tibetan Buddhism, anything. We understand or interpret the main part, that is the path is to get the moksha or the liberation, free from the material illusion. That is the main theme of the path, any path. But there is another path, the path which is a secretive path, a very difficult path, not very much chosen path, because the trouble that this path brings is far too high. And I cannot explain because no one can experience what this is actually like. Maybe I can use terms like nirvana, peace, completeness, but the word expression could be a bit of understanding, but the real sense of expectation of learning is way more big. If somebody explains love to me, to the person who never experienced love, is of no use, is of senseless use, because love is a state of mind, is a state of place that is cannot be understood or interpreted. In the same way, anything that comes in the path of spirituality can be experienced. Maybe we all can become some guide or nurture, but at the same time, the child must ultimately grow, not the parent. The parent can only tell these are the paths, these are the things that are here. You can use these resources, you can use the available things around you, you can help them, you can grow with them, But ultimately, the child must grow to all the stages. He must see the teenage, he must see the adult life, he must be satisfied with all the things which he has got. But the thing is, the thread between the materialistic sense and the spiritualistic sense must be broken or must be understood by the child himself. There is no interpreter who can go to that level and can guide the student. So the student must be very, very willing enough to explore his paths. That is why there are two chosen paths here. One is absolutely clear, path of liberation. The other path is secretive path. This path is recommended by voice of the silence, so that the first benefit that you can really do is to help the fellow humanity. And Theosophical Society also says that the first law, being the part of this absolute nucleus, law of brotherhood, you being the nucleus of that brotherhood. And although you achieve that enlightenment, although you achieve that freedom from the materialistic sense, it is your duty being in this earth to help the fellow people. So the path that is absolutely clear, absolutely understandable is the path of liberation, but the path that is unclear, very difficult, narrow, yet to be taken or yet to is recommended is a secretive path. That is why very few students are attained to this level. Because we born as a human beings in this earth are bound to one thing, that is the law of karma. And no one can expect escape from the law of karma, because the law of karma is just like that. It is not formed by actions, it is formed by intentions. In fact, I would say it is purely intentions. You don't need to act. Every inaction is also an action in some sense, on some plane or some planet. But ultimately, the one has to understand that the intentions are the ones which create the law of karma, and this is creating a baggage on the individual. So how far he develops, how far he grows, how far he nurtures, that is a point of inclusion, but he should never forget his duties as a human being born on this holy planet Earth. Because at the end of the life, at the end of this whole universe, everybody should reach that sacred place called Alaya, the temple which is absolutely visible when the mind of the person is different from the person himself. Because Jiddu Krishnamurti rightly says every time, the observer being observed. In the truest sense, we cannot understand this word, but imagine this. I am doing an action, and that action is done by me or somebody else, or there is someone who is behind my action. When these thoughts come, then there is some kind of trouble in the mind. Oh, what is happening to my body? Who is this guy who is running this action? If you feel that you are the one who is doing that action, then you are still in the law of karma, because you are bound by intentions. But when you feel that you are observer of that action maker, then you get a deeper clarity, then you achieve a sense of freedom, which is useful for the secretive path. The path where the teacher explains to the student that this is the way you have to go. The difficult road is there, but you still have to go and reach out people, help out people, and make lives absolutely interesting with curiosity, in a materialistic sense or philosophical sense, in any sense whatsoever. And I have to say, from a theosophical context as well, there can be no savior to the other who can lift the wheel of ignorance. There is no one who can help you out when you are suffering. All that he can do is, if you're suffering, that is of the illusioning suffer, then you have to come out of that illusion, then feel that this is not you. For saying it is difficult, or it is easy to understand, but on a real sense, on a different plane, it is far more difficult, far more highly difficult. And there was a doubt in my mind. Miss Catalina, have some time, or I have to end this?
You have a couple of minutes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm off my end as well. So let me tell this. There was a doubt in a website. I've searched this. He is asking, Theosophical Society was established in 1875 odd. Then now it is 2020, 2021. Why is it that there is no advanced level? That why is not everybody talking about Theosophical Society and the spirituality or the real sense of wisdom, ancient wisdom, Western culture, Eastern culture, old, etc., etc. Then I don't talk the answer which was given for that, but I would say my answer as an interpretation so that I can conclude the speech. The main part is that let us consider an example again. Being a finance guy, I have to talk about companies. There's a big company, and in that company, there is a functional level, there's an organizational level, and there's a corporate level. In that corporate level, there are only 10 to 20 people. In the organizational level, there could be 100 people. In the functional level, there could be some lakhs of people working as employees. Now, the amount of impact created by the employees or the functional level is not equal to the amount of impact created by the top level or the 10 board members. You understand? As the planes increases, the one action there is equal to some millions of reactions in the planet Earth. Getting me? So that is the real sense. Although there are very much less of spiritualist numbers or Theosophical Society number or the count of this people understanding or gathering comparative religion, ancient wisdom, this is very less number, but the amount of reaction or the amount of empathy they can produce to the whole world is far more big than what one can expect with a tiny brain. So if you choose the secret path, you must first feel that you are responsible for the growth of the humanity, and you are here for the humanity himself. You are just a part of the nature, respect the nature, and once you are free from this, you will be separated from this planet Earth and you will be in the state of liberation. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I am really I'm really glad for this opportunity. It's very good talking here and sharing my thoughts with all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sri Harsha, for such a enlightening talk. Okay,
so
now, thank you. Now we will welcome our next speaker from Italy, Elena Bessie Camplone. She is a sympathizer of the Theosophical Society since 2014, and she decided to enroll in the TS, becoming a member in 2019. For a year, she has been attending the study group of Pier Giorgio Parola on the secret doctrines. So, Elena,
thank
please.
you so much. I'm very excited to be here. And thank you, Edgar, and thank you, Armielyn and Sri Harsha, for your talking. We're very nice. And I want to share some slides. Okay. Okay. In our modern society, mental capacity and moral power are dissociated. The integration of head and heart is a central and fundamental teaching of the voice of the silence. A moral principle must not only be recognized, but also applied. The general rule is that of brotherhood, not only perceived, but fully lived. It is easy to understand that if a thought, a feeling, or an action damage another's soul, then it is wrong. A fundamental issue to keep in mind is that consciousness never changes. It is the forms that carry it and allow it to manifest itself to change. For these, we can say that yes, the absolute truth is one, but then everyone has his own truth, his own point of view, given by the set of experiences that have characterized his life, but also by the skandha inherited from the quaternary of the previous incarnation. That dust on the mirror that alters the reflection of the monad, for each one in a different way. All those who aspire to walk the highways are called to examine themselves in the light of their inner ego. First of all, eliminating any residual dust from the mirror, with the help of the divine virtues, which are represented by 7 keys. which are none other than paramitas, a term that means perfections, that is, virtues, positive behaviors. So we have dana and sila and kshanti, which constitute the first triad. And then we have the second triad consisting of dhyana and prajna. In the central position, we have vairagya, that is indifference to pleasures and pains. In fact, it literally means by, without, and ragya, passion, and the correlation with the Kama principle goes without saying, a principle that dominates our fourth round. It should be noted that the numbers of paramitas varies greatly, both according to the doctrines and also within the Blavatskian system itself, on the basis of the teaching to be given. The first 6 are considered for the apprentice, those who start, and the 7th is for those who are more advanced. And there are 3 more for the adepts, the advanced paramitas, relating to the principles that we have to be awakening the rounds that we follow our fourth, and our courage, discrimination, and awakening of consciousness. I want to take a minute to analyze the septenary system, which is a constant in Blavatsky, but not only. This number has a very important part in all cultures, philosophy, science, and religions. The septenary subdivision is more important and frequent than the tertiary one. And 7 are the wonders of the world, 7 the virtues, 4 cardinal and 3 theological, 7 the metal, 7 the books of Hermes Trismegistus, 7 the days of creation, 7 colors, of which white contains them all and reject them all. And there are also 7 principles, tattvas, planes, nodes, planets, chakras, chemical creation, and much more. We could go so far with this argumentation, but now let's analyze these 7 keys individually, starting from dana, which means material abundance, but which in a higher sense indicates charity and immortal love, unconditional, without attachments, characterized by the absence of discriminating judgment on the events of life, and for which everything has a meaning. Everything is perfect. It includes spiritual generosity, that is the teaching and transmission of concepts that we have made our own, and material generosity, such as offering material objects without expecting any reward. Here emerged humility on the part of the researcher and his total abandonment to the flow of life that derives from the full understanding of the fact that love is the great force that animates the universe. A pleasant and easy sensation to acquire, as HPB intends in her verses. And the pilgrim who passed the first portal will soon find himself in front of Sila, the harmonic action between thought, word, and action that starts from a deep understanding of the causes in order to act for collective harmony and not for one's personal well-being. It is implicit to avoid doing bad things, avoiding poisons for the body, speech, and mind. And it includes practicing good and doing good for sentient being without selfish thoughts. And as you proceed on the second path, doubts and fears may arise, but as Blavatsky points out, fear kills the will and paralyzes all actions. So pay attention to fear. Harmonize thoughts with action. Consequently, we arrive at sweet patience that nothing can disturb. Kshanti. It includes putting up with ingratitude, then practicing patience without responding to insults, threats, or violence. And here take place the great struggle between the higher manas and the lower manas, the battle for the destruction of Antakarana and the unification of the two into one begin. But the warning is always present, so fear seems to be very dangerous at this point. We can connect this paramita to the manas principle and therefore to planet Saturn. Kshanti with Shila and Dana form the first triad, so love creates harmony, and without patience, harmony cannot be created. The Vairagya key is subsequently reported. Indifference to pleasure and pain, which derives from a deep understanding of the illusory aspects of the ego that generate attachment of life and suffering. Without it, the illusion of Maya cannot be overcome and the truth of Sat cannot be perceived. Here we are called to enter trials, abandoning the attachment of this life and this life. Thus eliminated the earthly attachment. One attachment leads to the action of desire. So this is the door of the temptation that are underlying humans. You have to learn to master your thoughts before you can proceed. In fact, the slightest breeze of passion can make you waver and fall. In one of his studies, Badia states that for the man of flesh, the word of the spirit is a void. But when you make the most sublime choice and make the decision, you see the void in the world of the senses. And as we already mentioned it several times, it is linked to the karma principle, therefore the planet Venus. It's interesting to note that in the menorah candelabra, the central candle is called shamash, which means keeper. It is located in the center of the candlestick and is used to light the other candles. During Hanukkah, each evening, the shamash is lighted first, and the others are added gradually, one for each evening of the holiday. The similarity can lead to think of the fact that the centrality of Vairagya is not accidental. As being our foreground bound to the karma principle, we are constantly led to work on this. And the first element of the second triad is made up of viriya, the indomitable energy, that is that condition of radiant strength of one who has been able to overcome the tests that have been presented so far, and which implies the effort to maintain the deepest commitment and perseverance in practice encouraged by study. In fact, a sense of encouragement emerging in the verse of this key to prolong the efforts. The principle related to this paramita is prana in its highest expression, the planet Mercury. And bearing in mind the fact that the fifth slokas in the stanzas of Xian are always anticipation of what will happen in the next room, I can believe that viriya may represent an anticipation of the bodhisattvic state. We therefore come to the longer for paramita, dhyana, contemplation, refugee of yogis, blessed destination of Sratapatti. And in this state, there is no longer any separation between subject and object, but one lives in a full state of oneness. This is the best known paramita, the excellent dhyana of the Tathagatas. This is about understanding reality without discursive thinking. Having reached this path, one has become physically, mentally, and morally indifferent and insensitive to pains and pleasures. To obtain this paramita, the student must have learned to use energy for both offensive and defensive purpose. Badia always states that the state of dhyana is static in relation to what is lower, but dynamic in relation to what is higher. And the attacks of the astral light must be neutralized and repelled. Therefore, it's easy to understand that the principle relating to this state is buddhi, whose manifestation is precisely the astral light in its highest meaning, akasha. The planet we can associate it with is Uranus. When the disciple is at this point, he defines himself as entered the stream. And it is now possible to make the choice, and we reconnect now to the double path. We can therefore see how the order of the fragments is not in succession, but as in a sort of puzzle, everything serves to stimulate the intuition and personal interpretation of the reader, also based on what is necessary to understand at that particular moment, as Sri Harsha was saying as well. And it is in this way that with indomitable force, one continues in contemplation, one arrives at prajna, full spiritual perception, wisdom acquired through meditation. Therefore, experimenting with meditative practice, what has been understood. Crossing his threshold, he becomes a compassionate Buddha to remain without selfishness until the end without end, in the infinite eternal present. Here, the round refers toward the invisible robes of the Dharmakaya and end up in the nirvanic state to become, after his death, a Nirmanakaya in support to all humanity. The principle connected to this paramita is Atma, and the planet is Neptune. And I want to reflect on the fact that in any case, the Nirmanakaya, by renouncing nirvana, remains in a buddhic and not fully atmic condition, as it perceives within the limits of the possibilities of its karma a spiritual body that allows him to help humanity. The Dharmakaya, the one who lives in a fully atmic state, is the one who will keep full consciousness even during the pralaya, and as he is able to be without the need for any object in an unmanifest way, and he becomes a pure subjectivity. Thank you for watching. Thank you. And
thank you. Thank you very much, Elena, for this detailed and enlightening presentation. So I just want to thank all the four of you for this deep, insightful presentation, and also the big effort that you have done to bring in a short time such a enormous content of the voice of the silence. I am sure that many of us are very motivated to continue the study and the practice of the precepts expressed on this jewel of the Theosophical literature. And yes, today we extended our meeting a little bit more, but I think it's worth because all these presentations were really, really amazing. Thank you once more. So now we will stop the YouTube transmission to open for some minutes of question, comments, discussion. So whoever wants to ask or make any comment, please feel free to do it. You just have to raise your hand or write the comment.